charge.
You be in charge, girl. My first introduction to Buddhism is when she sat me on a chair and put a little statue of a Buddha on her dresser, and she said, "Now draw that." She was actually my first teacher in drawing. She introduced me to human anatomy, how you draw it, and spatial relationship and everything, and also color. So, and my mother is psychic. Now I say that without a doubt because she would do very funny things. We would be talking, or she'd be talking, she'd say, "Excuse me, not now." And what she's actually talking to a spirit and saying, "Not now, don't bother me." And she was very wise in the sense that she said, if you go into these other realms, I don't like the idea of doing that. Until you have enough knowledge that you can protect yourself, I don't think anyone should step into that realm. And I've not forgotten that. And boy, was she right. My mom never thought of it as psychic ability. To her way of thinking, this is normal. Mm-hmm. And it was her thought, and many agree with this, is that it's just like something we've forgotten. And somehow, because we're not using it, it's not being developed.
Mm-hmm. What did your mother do for a living?
She began as a burlesque dancer after she met my dad. He was in burlesque. He was considered the straight man. Now, she was the least glamorous, even though she had this terrific personality, and she was, at one time, really quite beautiful. But as she told me, she says, you start taking the clothes off, and it becomes hysterical, because it's just a silly thing. So she was beyond liberal. And actually, she once explained to me, she says, as far as I'm concerned, children are like the flowers in the field. Just let them grow. They're going to grow that way anyway, so why interfere? So that was her philosophy. When she decided that she figured this is an artist, she went to the local butcher shop, and she was given free all the butcher papers she wanted. And she covered, we lived in a flat in San Francisco, upper floor, and she covered all the walls, the living room walls, and I got to draw on every wall, which I did. And what I did is she would have these styles for these other dancers, and she would think of these costumes, and I would illustrate the costumes all over the walls. I'd have these figures of these models and just do a style show for her. So they could come up and say, "Oh, which do you like?" "Well, I like the number 5 there." So it was very cool. And she was the most, and is the most eccentric human being I have ever come across, except for my dad. That's probably what attracted them. How he ever got into being a straight man for a comedy thing, I have no idea how that occurred. But throughout all of this, from the time he was, I guess, was a teenager, he was fascinated with the esoteric literature. And of course he said, well, let's start with Mother India, let's start with Hinduism, and then just work our way just around the world. And that's pretty much what he did. If my mom, as I pictured her, she was like the gypsy princess. My dad was the guru of the world. He was the embodiment of all wisdom. There he was. Which was hard because he was 5'3" and little guy. He was known in San Francisco. He belonged to the Theosophical Society. Every Sunday there would be the walk through Golden Gate Park. He would lecture, and many people would go. They knew him from the lectures. So the walk through Golden Gate Park was an outgrowth, I believe, of that. My father actually had prisms, beautifully polished prisms, and he would talk to me about auras, and he said, look through these and see these. And it's funny because by the time I was 16, I was seeing those without the prisms. I was seeing that. One time he said to me, doesn't matter what you believe in, whatever. It's like, it's conduct, good conduct, in the Buddhist way. But it doesn't have to be a Buddhist way or any way. It just has to be kind to each other. And he said, look, you want to worship something? Pick a lampshade. You can worship the lampshade, whatever. I don't care what you do, but the kindness is essential. I am fascinated by differences, and I'm thrilled with details. When I got to the university, I got into the Greek mystery religions. And by the way, it's still a mystery because going through all the books and even special study classes I had with teachers, they never revealed, and it's sort of like, then I got this deep, deep desire. Where are the mysteries? I want them revealed. And I had it in my mind that in ancient Greece, they must have known something about the essential, why we're here. And then I read about the goddess of wheat, and I read that these great philosophers belonged to this sect, religious sect. And what they would do, they would take them underground in a cave, and they would have to sleep there. It was the idea of almost deprived of any sensory thing. And I'm sure they had fire. I'm sure they went through initiations and everything. And then, as soon as the sun started to rise, they would go out into a wheat field or a field. And it was just like recognizing the sun, and that would be the end of their initiation. And they were not allowed to talk about it. So why did I think I could open up a book and read about it? I just thought I could. But when I thought about that, and after a while I realized, and this is funny because it didn't come to me till years later, till after I was doing a workshop. If you have an experience that's so particularized to you and your essence, I don't have to ask that person not to talk about it. You can't talk about it because even if you spoke the absolute truth in great detail, no one could hear and understand because it's that perfectly designed to you. And that's what I think would happen is I like to believe that it went through, it was so successful and so monumental that when you came out, and I think it was Plato that said he was never the same. And this is the one thing he said he was never the same, but the thing that really stuck was he said, I knew that there was no such thing as a real death.